to the Astrocast. I'm your host, Drew. Today is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. New moon is nearly with us. Should be, I believe it's coming on Sunday. So if you're listening as this episode is released and you have, hopefully clear skies in your weekend this area, then you definitely have something to look forward to. I can tell you, I unfortunately have not had that problem for the last week or so. It's been nothing but cloudy skies, which is always a drag, especially when you have new gear that you haven't really gotten to break in yet. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I was working on imaging Markarian's chain, and I did a good solid 2 nights of imaging, and I ended up with, I think, about 10 hours of data. And I had this terrible vignetting that I just could not get rid of. Come to find out, I had the filter too far back in the tube, essentially the extension tubes, and it was causing this awful vignetting, and even my flats couldn't get it to go away. So go figure, I ended up losing two nights worth of data on a really awesome chain of galaxies. But that's okay. It's all a learning experience. And even those of us who have been doing this for years still occasionally have, foibles like that where we screw up and, lose a night or two's data. That's okay. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit frustrating when it happens, but you use it as a learning experience. I was getting a little bit too fast and loose with my gear, assuming that, everything is ready to go and working fine. When in reality, I've got a new telescope and I haven't really figured it out yet. And when I say figured it out, I mean, learned it inside and out from top to bottom. And that's really what I would think most people do for the first, couple months of ownership of their new scope. For me, as long as I can get all the kinks worked out before nebula season truly rolls around, then I'll be happy. That being said, I would love to, make it out somewhere dark. I'm not going to be able to this weekend just because we have a lot going on this weekend. But perhaps next weekend, whenever it won't be new moon anymore, but it'll still be a early moon that sets very early in the evening, which is what you want this time of year. So in case you don't know, the moon, the way that it cycles, if you watch it long enough, you'll start to learn that, around full moon, obviously it's in the sky the longest. And then around new moon, it is not in the night sky the longest amount of time. But what you'll notice is on whether you're on the new moon side, then as it fills up, it sets early in the evening. But then as you, approach full moon, it starts coming up later in the evening. And then, as it, gets full, obviously it's up pretty much the whole night. But right after new moon, that first, week or so after true new moon, the moon sets early enough that you can still, this time of the year, image things like in the Milky Way, after 1 o'clock in the morning, no problem. Speaking of which, Vega is already very clearly visible in the night sky before it's even super late. So that means we're almost there. I mean, getting into late April now, the Milky Way is definitely up. I was checking the map on Stellarium, and, it starts rising just after midnight now. So it's a good time of the year. If you're in the, right longitude, you can start working on Rho Ophiuchi. If anyone listens to the show for a long time, you'll know I always botch the name, but it's my favorite nebula. And I've seen quite a few attempts at it already on the various forums and social media places where I check out other people's astrophotography. So I definitely want to have a go at that. I'm thinking I might take a little miniature dark sky trip out to a national forest that we have in North Carolina. It's called Uwharrie National Forest, and I've been visiting that particular park, forever since I was a little boy. I've been out there for one reason or another, and it occurred to me that would probably be an excellent place to image from if I can find the right site. And I happened to be talking to another astronomer one day, and we were talking about great, local areas in North Carolina to go image in. And they mentioned to me Uwari, and apparently they have like a protected dark sky site there. So I haven't done all the research yet, but I'm hoping if everything works out, maybe not this weekend, but the following weekend, I'd like to go down there on Saturday night if the weather's decent and image all night and maybe even get row. So, other news, I actually finally pulled the trigger on a new L Pro filter. So this is something that I've been considering for a really long time because my L Pro is without a doubt my favorite filter. It's the one that I use the most. And I've just gotten excellent results on it over the years with my SV Bony 80ED doublet telescope, along with my ASI 294 MC Pro. But now that I have the new Astrograph, I've been thinking about using the R5 in combination with the new Astrograph, and that is the ASCAR SQA55 for anyone that's curious. And I ordered the T-ring for the camera so I can connect it to an M48 extension tube. And with an Astrograph, you don't have to have perfect back focus, so I won't have to struggle with those issues of getting it, absolutely perfect. I think it's like maybe 38 millimeters for a Canon R5. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's definitely shorter than like the 55 millimeter back focus that we see with most telescopes. So definitely looking forward to that. The type that I went with though, the 1.25 inch filter that I, already owned and have been using for years. Unfortunately, it's not big enough, not even close to big enough to cover up a full frame sensor. A full frame sensor is actually nearly 4 times as large as my 294, which is a micro 4/3 sensor. There's a lot of different sensor sizes out there. If what I'm saying sounds German to you, all you need to know is that the thing that takes the pictures on the camera is little on my Astrocam and it's big on my R5. So the reason I'm doing that is because I am still thinking I might do the Astro modification on the R5, but I watched some videos that I found on YouTube of people using unmodified R5s for astrophotography, and they actually got really good results. I was pretty impressed. Now, that being said, the majority of the stuff that I saw was wide field Milky Way, and I know you don't need a great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure it could help if you have a astro modified camera with your Milky Way shots, but I know that it's not necessary to get a good Milky Way shot. So I think the real test will be when I, put it on the Astrograph and then, point it up at the North American Nebula, for example, something that's very rich in hydrogen. Because when we astromodify cameras, like the mirrorless or DSLR cameras that Canon makes, for example, like I have, we actually remove a filter that is built into the camera that's called an infrared cut filter. And that actually blocks a lot of that red light that we get from the hydrogen alpha signals that are so abundant in our beautiful universe. So I want to test it out and see what's what before I, send my camera away and pray that it comes back to me in one piece. So I decided the best way to do that would be to get a good light pollution filter that would work in conjunction with the R5 and my ASCAR. And the best option that I found after weighing my options was to get the clip-in filter. So I actually got the kind that you can clip directly into the camera body. And then you can, as an advantage, obviously I can use it with the ASCAR, but I can also use it with all of my other lenses. So I'm really excited to try it with just a 16 millimeter lens to try to get a wide field Milky Way shot. I'm in Bortle 7 skies and they're only getting worse by the day. And I'm really curious to see if I can get a decent Milky Way shot with this L Pro on my R5. It's such a weird time to buy gear right now, because if you shop around at this very moment, you will see wild differences in astrophotography gear depending on which site you go to, because a lot of these places have already raised their prices to counteract the tariffs, and some of them have not. So, like for example, with the L Pro filter, typically I would go and buy that from like High Point or Regina Astro, both affiliate sponsors of the show. But I'm telling you that I actually bought it through Amazon this time because it was a very significant price difference. Now, that being said, I think I was buying, it seemed like a company, but it was definitely like a third party that I was purchasing from on Amazon, which is, always a little bit risky. And it's not something that I really suggest that you guys do. But, if they've got good seller history and you can, verify that they're legit, I will say Amazon is a heck of a lot less risky than somewhere like eBay. Ask me how I know. I had a nightmare scenario a year ago where I attempted to buy a Canon RFL lens that was way too good to be true. And, shame on me for thinking that it was even possible that somebody would be selling a lens like that, for a few $100s. But, I just figured they said they had that guarantee. You always hear about the eBay money back guarantee. And I even used PayPal, which is their preferred method of payment. And the guy ripped me off. He never even sent anything. And then the tracking info I ended up getting was for a completely different address. And when I reached out to eBay, and I use that term very loosely because it was literally impossible to get in touch with anyone at eBay. I had to go through hell and back to get them to give me my money back. And I'm talking like all the way up to the vice president at eBay. I normally would just let something like that go, but this was, a few $100s. It wasn't like it was $10. And unfortunately, I think that they expect most people to just let it go. And that's why they say that they have this guarantee. And I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to take eBay to court over, $300? And pay all those attorney fees? I think they know that, and it's a shame that you can prey on consumers in that way, but that's exactly what they did to me. And for that reason, I would never recommend anyone shop at eBay for any astrophotography gear, because if you end up getting screwed, you're going to have a nightmare of a time trying to get your money back. But like I say, Amazon, I feel a lot more comfortable with, just because anytime in the past where I've had a package lost or stolen or what have you, when I reach out to Amazon, I get a real person within a few minutes, and they've always refunded my money to me. And oftentimes, if the package shows up later, they just tell you to keep it. So, I feel a little bit safer giving them my money just because of past experience. But shop around is my point, particularly if you're, looking to make a major purchase right now. Before the tariffs potentially kick in, because obviously we know all of our gear is from China. I don't know if there's, well, not all of it, but a lot of, astrophotography and astronomy gear is made in China. The most popular mounts and cameras, ZWO, AM5, that's all Chinese goods. And the prices are going to skyrocket, if you can even get them. So if you're buying now, definitely shop around. So if you end up finding a great price at High Point or Regina Astro, you can of course use the affiliate links. I'll put them in the show notes for you. And any purchase that you make through the affiliate link will end up being, the same price you would otherwise pay, but you'll help the show because we get a small cut of the proceeds when that happens. So. All right. So all that being said, I did have a kind of a cool topic I wanted to talk about with you guys today. And I know it's going to bring up a lot of mixed feelings. Believe it, I am definitely among those with mixed feelings on this particular topic. I have some very strong feelings in some regards, and then some things are just super convenient. So if you haven't figured it out yet, we're talking about AI. So in particular, I want to talk about AI with astrophotography, planning, questions, answers, etc. Because I have been using ChatGPT a lot recently. I actually got the premium subscription or whatever that gives you faster access, and I think it's like $20 a month or something along those lines, and you get to test out all their newest large language models and those sorts of things. But, if you don't know, obviously there's a lot of controversy around GPT. particularly with things like art and music. Not just GPT, but AI in general. I'm not going to just rag on GPT because God knows they're not the only ones doing it. I saw a report that Meta went to a torrent site. This is Facebook's parent company. They went to a torrent site, which is where, you can illegally download media from. And they downloaded like 200 million books or some ridiculous number of books. And I'm talking like copyrighted, trademarked books that authors wrote. And they scraped every single one of them and fed it into their large language model. And they even removed the copyright pages. And then when one of the authors sued, their counterclaim was that the books themselves only feed into like 0.006% of the large language model. So they have no inherent value, is what Meta said. They said that, these authors' books have no value, which I found to be incredibly insulting. For authors everywhere, artists everywhere, photographers everywhere. We see it so much in photography right now. I can't tell you, like, I'm not like a likes seeker by any stretch of the imagination. I don't care if I've got 1,000 likes or 5 likes on my latest photo. I just like to share it because I think it's cool. But that being said, there is something that rubs me the wrong way when I see, some generic Facebook page that is just there to get likes, and they put up AI nebula or AI galaxies, and to the average astronomer, it is very apparent when it's fake, right? But to the layperson, they don't know, particularly, if they're not a very tech savvy person and they don't know everything that AI is doing right now. And you see one of these, fake photos and it just says, nature is incredible. And it'll end up having, 2 million likes and 500,000 shares or whatever. And that rubs me the wrong way. But I'm not going to sit here and bash AI the whole time because there are some excellent uses for it with all the negative things out of the way. And in particular, what I like to do is ask questions of it. So, and when I say ask questions, I mean like literally anything. I'll give you an example. When I was thinking about the building that I want to put around my observatory pier, do I want to do a roll-off roof? Do I want to do a simple shed with a lift-off roof? Or, what kind of design do I want to go with? I went into GPT and I said, I'm thinking about building a small observatory building around my telescope pier. Can you help me with that? And not only did it give me several options with which I could choose, but it also provided a very accurate parts list. So for example, if I have like a 6x6 area that I want to surround, it told me exactly how many 2x4s I would need, how many pieces of plywood I would need. If I wanted to do vinyl siding, how much of that I would need. I'm talking all the way down to the nuts and bolts, exactly what you need. And then it will draw blueprints for you. And it will even do a 3D sketch for you of what the finished product looks like. And I was telling a coworker about that and how impressed I was. And they mentioned to me that their father in the 70s was a general contractor. And they basically were explaining like how different it was back then, that, he would have to sit down after working all day and get his book out and start doing math because, we didn't have the same tools in the 70s that we do today. So it wasn't like you could just ask an AI to tell you what you need to build a building. He would have to literally figure out, I'm building a 5-story building. How many steel girders am I going to need? How much wood am I going to need? How much concrete am I going to need? And, a lot of work and math and everything went into that. And, it was just a very different time than it is today. And as he was kind of explaining this to me and all the, work that his father had to do, it occurred to me, let me ask GPT if it can tell me how to build a 5-story building. So I plotted, that question out, and it started asking me questions like, is it for a hotel? Is it for apartments? Is it for a business? What kind of business? What kind of floor layout do you want? So I went through and fed it info like I was building a 5-story apartment building. And I'll be damned if it didn't spit out like how much concrete you would need to, pour the foundation and how much steel you would need. And it even offered to, draw up blueprints and those sorts of things. So my point is in telling you that little anecdote is that it is very, very good for the most part, with, a few little exceptions that we'll talk about. Nothing is perfect in AI. We all know that. But it can be very, very good when fed the, correct prompts at helping you with astrophotography things. So like, outside of coming up with a parts list for my observatory, which I'm definitely going to use because I decided I am going to go with, the roll off type observatory. Basically, the whole building is going to be on rails. And then you just open the door up, slide the building out of the way, and then you start imaging. And ultimately, I think that's just going to be the simplest way for me to do it. So that's why I'm going that route. But, it got me thinking about what other sorts of cool things we could use GPT for in astrophotography. And going back to my R5 and my ASI 294, and then I also, obviously, I've got an R7 and an ASI 585 MC Pro. So I first asked it in combination with the ASCAR SQA 555, which is or 55, not 555, which is the better camera. And it started listing off, a bunch of different factoids, including why it thought the 294 was better. It talked about pixel scale. It talked about how the 585 was maybe better suited for planetary work, but is absolutely capable of DSO as well. And it made a lot of really good points. And when it got done making all those points, it said, would you like me to create a field of view comparison for you? And I was like, wow, that's clever, because it didn't even occur to me to ask something like that. And here it is suggesting to me, the natural thing that we would do. In the past, obviously, I would have used a tool like Telescopius or Stellarium to find out the field of view for any given camera and telescope. But I think it's a lot faster to just type it into GPT and say, hey, can you build a field of view for these two cameras with this telescope? And sure enough, it gave me excellent comparisons between all of them that I asked about. So I was spreading that info in our Discord chat, and another one of our group members did the same thing, but he took it a little bit further, and he cleverly asked that it lay those imaging rectangles, so that, the field of view, on top of an accurate image of the Orion Nebula. So, and I think he just wrote M42, which is super duper cool. And it did it. It laid it out for him. So I'm going to start, thinking of other clever things that we could do. Obviously, looking for targets is one that comes to mind. I think I'll have to get a little bit more in depth with my questions for that, because when I asked for interesting targets, all the, really obvious stuff came up, like look at the moon, look at Orion, look at, Saturn and that sort of thing. But I have yet to ask about, like, tell me about, the best dark nebula in Cepheus, for example, and see what it comes up with in that regard. And then actually open up Stellarium and test the results against that. Now, I will say one thing, like I mentioned earlier, this is not perfect technology, and AI often has what are called hallucinations, and they use that term whenever it makes a mistake. For me, most of the time when I have encountered hallucinations in AI, they've been very obvious, like for two things that clearly don't go together, and it'll try to suggest it as the answer. So it's kind of stuck out like a sore thumb to me for the most part, but your mileage may vary. So just keep that in mind. But, I would recommend pulling it up, just Chat GPT. They have an app on your phone. They got it on Android in the App Store, or obviously on your PC or Mac. And just play around with a little bit. Start asking some various questions, and you might be surprised with some of the results you get, because I've been kind of blown away by how thorough it can be, and the follow up questions that it asks you are really on point most of the time. I think I might have said Milky Way after midnight earlier. I was just checking Stellarium. It's actually closer to 1 a.m. right now that it's rising, but still 1 a.m., that ain't bad. If you can stay up late, you can start getting images of the Milky Way. Me personally, this time of year, I like to get up early. So I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and image for, a good 2.5 hours before the first light hits. And that gives you a good chance to get some targets that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get in galaxy season. So I always really enjoy that. And again, it's a perfect time of year if you want to try to get something like Rho. Obviously, it does get higher just because of, the Earth tilting on its axis whenever we get later into the summer months, but it's absolutely accessible this time of year. And, that particular region, there's just something about it. When I look at my favorite photos that I've taken, of the Milky Way, the best ones are always the ones that show Rho really, really well. We also just had a meteor shower. I guess technically it's still going on, the Lyrids. I didn't see any Lyrids. Again, I know it's been cloudy. It was, somewhat clear last night, still like not where you get your telescope out, but you could see, large patches of sky that were somewhat clear. So I went outside and I looked up for, half an hour or so, didn't catch any Lyrids, unfortunately. It is one of the lower per hour showers that we see each year. And with it, when I think at its peak, it's like 20 or under per hour, 10 to 20 per hour. But they are known to occasionally have outbursts and can produce some really big fireballs, which is really cool. So if you got to see any Lyrids, let me know. Feel free to shoot me an email at ruastrocast@gmail.com, or you can always follow us on Facebook. We got quite a few followers on there now, and I would love to have you be one of them. So feel free to join us over there and pick up on the conversation. Something else that I got to post on the Facebook today, which was really, really a cool moment for me personally, having done this show for, a year and 3 months now. As you may know, we recently released the first t-shirt for the Astrocast, or our first, piece of merch. And we've gotten quite a few orders on it already. And I got the first photo from our Patreon member, Ben, of him wearing the shirt out in the field with his telescope. And that was really cool. So I shared that on the page. Just sent him a really special thank you for that. And just want to give you a quick shout out, Ben. Thanks for that, man. That really means a lot more to me than you'll probably ever know. So it's really special to have that. And, if you would like to get your own, you can get one at qcru.com/store. I am working on the Astrocast domain as well. I'm actually thinking about maybe consolidating everything into just the Astrocast domain, just because my QC photography, I don't really use it as much as I used to. I still use it as my water tag on all my photography, obviously, but that's about it. And it's the name of the LLC for the Astrocast. But other than that, QC doesn't have a whole lot to do with the Astrocast in terms of name, and I don't want to confuse anyone when they're going to buy a shirt. But if you are interested in one, you can pick one up. I'll put the link in the show notes, and if you do, please make sure to tag me or at me. You can do hashtag the Astrocast, or just you can at me at QC Photography on Instagram if you want to check me out. I'll put the link in the show notes for that as well. And I would love, love, love to see you guys' photos out in the wild. So a few newer people to the hobby of astrophotography have asked me recently about interesting wide field targets for galaxy season. And this is kind of an age old question, I would think, for most of us, in April and early May, heck, like March, right? And it might not be readily apparent to most people, but if you have the right conditions, there is actually a really, really cool and very well suited type of astrophotography that you can do wide field at this time of year and capture just absolutely breathtaking images. And I'm talking very large, sometimes scaling, several degrees across one part of the night sky. And I'm wondering if anyone has figured out what I'm talking about yet. So, what type of thing would we see in our night sky at this time of year around things like Markarian's chain, for example? It would be visible there. It would be visible in the Ursa Major region. And I'm going to give you a Leo region, like Leo triplet, that is. A bigger hint might be around Polaris. You can often see it. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'm referring to IFN imaging, and IFN stands for Integrated Flux Nebula. So this is not as frequently seen in astrophotography, and it is extremely challenging. This is not for the faint of heart, and it's not something that you're going to do in 3 hours from a Bortle 7 site like most of my imaging is. But if you can take the time at this time of year and hopefully get to some darker skies, though I suppose if you were using mono and got enough integration time, you could make it work from a not great site. But honestly, you want Bortle 1 to Bortle 3 for this. I wouldn't bother if I wasn't in at least, Bortle 3 or lower. But integrated flux nebula, they're essentially clouds that form very, very high off the galactic plane of the Milky Way. So like we were talking about earlier, they're in the, higher up galactic regions like Polaris, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, the Leo, Markarian's chain, Draco even. And they are up and, imageable this time of year from, right when it gets dark all the way till 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And the beauty of these is that, obviously maybe not the beauty, but you do need a lot of integration time if you want to pick up IFN clouds, because they are extremely faint. So these clouds do not actually emit any light themselves. So it's not like an emission nebula, like Orion, for example, that's giving off light, but rather these are clouds of dust that are out in space that very lightly reflect starlight. And that's how we're able to pick them up. With that being said, if you have ever seen a really well done IFN photo, they can be absolutely breathtaking. So what you would want to do this sort of imaging is you would ideally have, a mono camera, or if you want to go broadband, it's perfectly fine. You can go broadband. I think you'd probably get faster results with a mono camera, maybe with just a luminance filter, because that's where it's going to show up the most. But you could absolutely do RGB as well, as long as you're in a dark enough area. And the reason that you need to be in a really dark area is even like the slightest sky gradients can just completely remove your ability to see it. It's similar to, seeing the Milky Way with the naked eye. I kind of equate that to imaging IFN in terms of needing dark skies. Like, as we know, if you don't have, Bortle 5 or lower skies, you're not even going to see the Milky Way. If you don't have Bortle 3 or lower skies, you're not going to be able to do IFN imaging. But if you can find a nice dark area, you can set up a fast wide scope, like a Rokinon 135 at f2 would be an excellent photo lens to use. Sorry, was it telescope or lens, or I get confused on that. Anyway, the Rokinon 135 would be an excellent option for this type of imaging. And you might have seen, if you watch a lot of Nico's videos, friend of the show, we had him on a few weeks back. If you want to listen to that episode, go back. It's Nico Carver from Nebula Photos. He did a really great video on photographing IFN from Polaris. And he actually went about it with, not needing a star tracker because you're shooting Polaris. So it's not as necessary to bring out that dust because obviously Polaris doesn't appear to move that much in our night sky. But that's not to say that there's not absolutely, beautiful clouds that you can get in other regions like, Ursa Major and Leo Triplet, et cetera. But you do need a lot of integration time. We're talking 10 or more hours minimum. And if you want to really bring out the really great detail, sometimes you got to go, 20, I've seen 30, I've even seen, 40 hours or more, to bring out the really, really beautiful detail. But for me, it's a great time of year to do that because we're still not quite into nebula season enough to where the targets that we really want to get in the core of the Milky Way are high enough for long enough for us to, really use all of the night's integration time. Whereas something like, Ursa Major is up for a very, very long part of the night. It's always around, but, it's high up for a very long part of the night. And you can use all of those hours to image. So, if you're lucky enough to be in like Bortle 3 conditions, then you could absolutely set up and just shoot for 4 or 5 nights in a row. Now, another thing is you have to do this around new moon. Don't even bother trying to shoot IFN whenever, the full moon's out. When the moon's out at all, really, short of like a waxing crescent moon that's setting just an hour after, I wouldn't bother if the moon's out because, again, it's so very faint. These clouds are that, any sort of light pollution or, moonshine is just going to completely remove it. Then when you go to process your images, you need to be, obviously a bit more aggressive in some respects, but you also have to be very careful with your extractions because, again, a lot of times the IFN regions can be mistaken for vignetting. So you want to be really careful, but also really aggressive. So I'm telling you all this because it is a really good challenge for this time of the year. So if you've kind of already done all of the targets that you generally take, shoot this time of year, and you're kind of just waiting on the Milky Way to come on up high enough to where we can start imaging every night, maybe, try some IFN imaging because it is really, really cool. You can get some incredibly beautiful photos, wide field dust frames. And with a lot of the galactic areas where we've got things like the Leo triplet, like I was talking about earlier, you could have, all of the Leo triplet in the center of your frame and then just have this beautiful diffuse cirrus nebula clouds around it. And to me, those photos are just absolutely breathtaking. So just a little bit of a recommendation to you, something to think about. Again, if you want to look it up, it's IFN imaging. And it is definitely challenging. Like I say, you definitely want to have fast optics, mono camera if you have one. Not necessary, but obviously could help. Luminance filter. And then if you want to combine that with RGB to get the stars, I would recommend dithering on every frame if you're going to do IFN imaging, just because walking noise can become a huge issue when you're working with really, really faint objects in our night sky. And but if you succeed and you're able to pull in that beautiful dust, and I know you can do it because I've imaged the Pleiades and gotten IFN dust around it. So you can certainly do it, but like I say, it's a challenging thing to photograph. But if you're at that time of the year where you're kind of waiting around for the Milky Way, I highly, highly recommend considering giving it a shot because it's extremely rewarding when you're able to get those really, really faint, wispy dust clouds to come out, especially around galaxies. Because man, oh man, does it look beautiful when you nail it. I was just briefly checking over the messages in our Discord chat before starting the show. And really, I was checking to, check the new members because I always like to say hi to our new members whenever they join on the show. Let me do a quick shout out again. I don't know if I know I mentioned Mark last week, but thank you again, Mark, for joining the group. We love having you there. You've already had a huge impact, so thank you for that. And I also wanted to welcome our other new member who goes by the name Gordon. I think it's Captain Flash on the chat. Forgive me if I just doxed you, my friend, but Captain Flash, welcome to the group. We're extremely happy to have you, and really, really cool to have some new members joining the group. But one thing that I noticed while I was, kind of checking out the chat and catching up on the topics was I remember Ben, that I mentioned earlier today in the show, had said that the more that he gets into this hobby, the more it's kind of opened his eyes to how badly we're treating our planet in a lot of respects. You guys know I am very, very big on combating light pollution. So I just wanted to take a moment to remind everybody, just like our friend Mark said in the chat, it starts with us. So the only way that we're ever going to stop something like light pollution is to change opinions one mind at a time. So, obviously there's little things that you can do around your house. Consider motion detection bulbs. If you're worried about crime and those sorts of things, get motion detection lights. They even sell just straight up bulbs now that are motion detection, so you don't even have to change the fixture out. But we have motion detection bulbs on our backyard, which is the only area that we really worry about. And then I generally try to keep all the lights off out front, except for one red lamp that I leave on. That's a hue bulb, and I leave it dimly lit. And that's just so I can see in my front driveway when I walk outside. Other than that, though, you won't find any light emanating from my house. And I always talk to my neighbors and friends about it as well. And man, if everybody listening to this show could do that, and all those people told another person and they told another person, we could make a real difference in the world. And this is of a particular import right now, because you may or may not know, but the world's best, darkest skies are actually under threat of light pollution for the first time in a long time as we speak. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this situation, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a lot of this from memory from what I have been able to read. There was actually an excellent story about it in Sky and Telescope magazine for the May issue, if you want to read more about it. But essentially, down in Chile, where the Atacama Desert is, which is home to the world's most renowned dark skies for astronomical observations, is the location called Mount Paranal. And Mount Paranal is actually home to the ESO's very large telescope. We love naming telescopes large. There's a whole humorous section to that, but we're not going to get into it right now. But yeah, the European Space Asian, is it Europeans? I'm sorry, ESO's European Southern Observatory. So the VLT down there, it's one of the best instruments, if not the best instrument in the world for observation. And unfortunately, it looks like this company is planning a hydrogen manufacturing plant that's going to be very, very close to the VLT. And if this ends up happening, they're going to build these solar and wind farms, battery storage, hydrogen production facilities. It's going to be very, very large, and it's expected to increase sky brightness by about 10% in the area. And that might not sound like much, but when you're talking about the world's darkest skies, it is a huge difference. It's the difference between being able to see the faintest galaxies in the world and not being able to see them. So unfortunately, it doesn't sound like the fight is going very well so far from what I've read. So I do know that the group from the ESO got together and they actually wrote a letter to the company, which is called AES, by the way, and they're actually a energy corporation that's based out of America. So AES from America are the people that are trying to build the hydrogen plant down there in Chile. And they basically explained to them what's happening and why it's so important, and just suggested that, you know, they maybe move their plant to an area that wouldn't be damaging to all of the world's astronomers. And unfortunately, AES basically just responded with, we are meeting all local legal requirements, and they still submitted the project plans anyway. I have not seen really anything yet that makes me think that this project is not going to go through. And man, oh man, what a shame that is. And it's a shame in particular because this project is to build a renewable energy plant, and they got to have a dock there to ship the goods out, and that's kind of the whole purpose of it. But like, you can have your cake and eat it too. There's no reason that you can't have that same renewable energy plant, 100 miles down the road, where you're not impacting the light pollution so terribly bad in the area. So I would highly recommend that, if you're interested in that, and maybe you want to help as well, what I can do is I can link to the darksky.org page. Dark Sky International is actually the group that has been fighting to keep this green project out of Chile, or at least, move it down the road, which is what they've suggested doing. And they actually have a couple of calls to action on their page where you can actually help if you would like to. So it's got other impacts too, outside of just astronomical ones. There's a large population of sea turtles down there that could be impacted by light pollution. And it's not just the light that the plant is going to give off, but also dust, because remember, this is like industrial manufacturing that's happening down there, and it's going to cause a lot of dust in the air. And if that dust gets in the air, guess what's going to happen? The seeing is going to turn to crap. And those, without a doubt, are the best skies that we have in the world. So we definitely do not want that happening because it could disrupt the airflows. It can, obviously light pollution, dust, turbulence, all the, different terrible things that could happen because of this project. So they really just want to establish like a legally protected buffer zone of at least 50 kilometers. I kind of wonder, would 50 kilometers really be enough for all light pollution? I mean, I'm trying to think, well, I suppose it would when you drive outside the city. I would think you'd want to get more than 50 kilometers. I would think like 75 to 100 kilometers. But then again, I haven't sat down and done the math on it, and I'm willing to bet that they more than likely have. So hopefully something will happen. I know that they do have momentum on their side. They do have a group of senators that are working with them in Chile to stop this from happening. And man, I really, really hope it does, because, right now the VLT is obviously there, and they're also in the process of building another very large telescope. It's not literally called the Very Large Telescope. I believe it's the Cherenkov Telescope Array Observatory South, CTOW South, is the one that's currently being built. And, it really could put both of, some of the best telescopes in the world in danger, because this is like a mega project. It's huge, and it would only be about 5 to 11 kilometers away from the observatory. 5 kilometers is not far enough at all to stop light pollution. I know when I'm in a Bortle 1 site, you can drive a mile away from where you're imaging and light a single candle, and you can see that single candle as clear as day from a mile away. So if they're only 5 kilometers away with an industrial mega project, I really kind of wonder if 10% is all that's going to happen, because sure seems like it could be a lot more than 10% damage done to those night skies. So really, really hope that this ends up working out because, obviously not just for myself, though it is, a bucket list item of mine to get down to the Atacama Desert and see the best skies in the world. And I'm hoping to make that happen within the next couple of years. But man, I better get a move on. It's sad because, if this doesn't change at some point and we don't start adopting the changes that are needed, using warm bulbs instead of these, broadband, bright blue bulbs that are just terrible. I've never met anyone that are like, oh, awesome. Those really bright blue lights. I love those. It's almost like, industry just kind of shoved them down our throat because they were the new technology and people saw blue lights and they were like, ooh, that's cool looking. But everybody hates them now. Like, I think the vast majority of my family and friends would gladly go back to just regular yellow halogen bulbs on all of our cars if we could, getting blinded by those, insanely bright blue lights while you're driving down the road is never fun. So anyway, do your part. I will link in the show notes to the page for Dark Sky org. And if you want to check out their call to action and, do what you can, obviously do. And then, think local as well. Do what you can around your home and business and talk to your friends and neighbors and your family and just, see what we can do one piece at a time. Because if we don't start acting now, our kids and grandkids, they aren't going to have night skies to look at. It'll be a privilege only for the mega rich that can afford to go out to, dark sky islands or dark sky tourism, which is already a thing and it shouldn't be. It's a shame that we have to have things like dark sky tourism because everybody should be able to see the Milky Way with their own eyes, in my humble opinion. All right. So with that being said, why don't we talk about our recommendation for this week? I've got a fun one for you. And if you're like me, you might have screamed like a little girl when you saw it get announced yesterday. The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which is just a monumental game from my early adulthood. It brings me back to a very specific time in my life. It makes me think about, a lot of great memories. And it was just crazy. I was sitting at work the other day and I saw an article pop up where they were saying Elder Scrolls Oblivion remaster. And I said, what is this? And I clicked on it. It brought me to a YouTube video and they were showing, previews of what the game's going to look like. And it looks incredible. And I'm like, oh man, I get to go play Oblivion again. This is going to be great. And I'm watching it. And like most things, when these game announcements come out, I was thinking to myself, this is awesome, but it'll be 2 years before it comes out. So I guess whenever it comes out, I'll have that to look forward to. I didn't even finish the video that I was watching because I got busy at work and I didn't have time to watch, video game stuff at work. So I turned it off, got back to work. Later that night, I'm sitting on the couch and I was just kind of zoning out, watching TV, I think. And I happened to pull up Steam and I saw it and it said available now. And I think I literally screamed because that never, ever, ever happens. I guess Nintendo probably occasionally does that. They'll announce something and then it'll be available right then and there. But that is very rare for something, really cool like that to be announced and then available the same day. So big kudos to Bethesda for pulling that one off. What an awesome surprise that was to be able to download that. So I'm going to be playing that tonight after I finish uploading this episode, and I would recommend that you do too. So if you don't know, it's a role-playing game. You get to make your own character and you play in a world called Cyrindel. Well, that's the name of the main city that you're in. Anyhow, it's an amazing game. Highly recommend it. I loved it when I was 20 when it came out. I can't believe it's been 20 years since Oblivion came out. But man, when I heard that music on the intro, it just it sent chills down my spine just hearing that tune come back. So that would be my recommendation for the week. It is available on Xbox Game Pass. If you have that, you can get it for free on there. I've got it on Steam just because I'm a PC gamer and I prefer Steam whenever possible. But it is free on Game Pass. I kind of found out that afterwards. I might have considered getting it on Game Pass, but I didn't. So anyway, that'll be the recommendation for this week. And I just want to take a moment and thank our Patreon members. If you would like to join the Patreon for just $1 or $5 per month, you can do that at patreon.com/the Astrocast. With that donation, you will get access to the members only Discord, where, we get together, we talk all the time. We're starting to upload data to a shared area where anybody can have at this data, which is a really cool benefit. Obviously, if you're interested in that, highly recommend you join us. It's a really awesome community to be a part of, and it's grown into something much bigger than just me at this point. So shout out to everybody who is a member of the Patreon and a member of the Astrocast Society. So that is going to do it for this week. I thank you so much for sitting down with me. I hope that you have nice weather over the coming weekend, because like we say, new moon will be here on Sunday. So that means get out there and start imaging. I'm your host, Rue. You have been listening to the Astrocast. And as always, clear skies.